man, the maker of gods.
But that may be said only of the few men who are endowed with a faithful mind. Of those with a liking for vice, let nothing be said lest this highly spiritual discourse be dishonored by thinking of them. And since I have spoken of the kinship and fellowship of men with the gods, Asclepius, acknowledge the power and strength of man. Just as the Lord and Father, or God, his greatest name, is the creator of the heavenly gods, so man is the maker of the gods in temples who are content to be close to human beings. Man not only receives light, but he gives it. Not only does man progress towards God, but he forms God. Do you wonder at this, Asclepius, or do you doubt as most people do?
I am astounded, Trismegistus. But I willingly assent to your words and regard man as most fortunate inasmuch as he has attained such great happiness.
And he, who is the greatest of all creatures, is justly worthy of admiration. Everyone agrees that the race of gods clearly sprang from the purest part of nature, and their symbols are simply heads which represent the whole being. But the forms of gods which men create are taken from two natures, from the divine, which is pure and far more godlike, and from that which is within men, that is, from matter. Having being formed from such matter, they are not represented by heads alone, but by the whole body with all its members. Thus humanity is always reminded of its own nature and origin as it continues to represent divinity in this way. So just as the Father and the Lord has made the eternal gods to be similar to himself, so humanity has made its gods in the likeness of its own features.
Disaster foretold.
Are you speaking of statues, Trismegistus? Yes, statues, Asclepius. Do you see how you lack faith? These statues are made alive by consciousness, and they are filled with breath. They do mighty deeds. They have knowledge of the future, which they predict through oracles, prophets, dreams, and in many other ways. They bring illnesses to men and cure them. They give sadness and happiness according to merit. Do you not realize, Asclepius, that Egypt is the image of heaven? Or to speak more precisely, all things which are set in motion and regulated in heaven have been transferred, have descended into Egypt? More truthfully still, our land is the temple of the whole cosmos. Yet since the wise should know all that is to come, it is right that you should not be ignorant of something else. A time will come when it appears that the Egyptians have worshipped God with pure mind and sincere devotion in vain. All their holy worship will turn out to be without effect and will bear no fruit. For the gods will withdraw from earth to heaven, and Egypt will be deserted. The land which used to be the seat of religion will be abandoned by the gods and become void of their presence. Not only will foreigners pouring into the region and covering this land neglect religion, but what is worse, religion, duties to the gods, and divine worship will be prohibited with penalties prescribed by so-called laws. This holy land, this home of sanctuaries and temples, will all be filled with sepulchres and the dead. Egypt. Egypt, only stories of your religion will survive, and these your children will not believe. Only words carved in stone will narrate your pious deeds. Scythians, Indians, or other such will inhabit Egypt. It will be peopled by barbarian neighbors. The gods will return to heaven and abandon men, who will then all die. Thus Egypt, deprived of gods and men, will become a desert. Now I speak to you, most holy river. I tell of your future. You will be filled with a torrent of blood right up to your banks, and these you will burst through. Not only will your sacred waters be polluted with blood, but your banks will burst open, and the dead will far outnumber the living. Anyone who survives will be recognized only by his language as Egyptian. From his actions, one would take him to be a foreigner.